Ian Lindsay of Lindsay and Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network, since 1996, marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational investment, and project development real estate. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca.
You're listening to Nonpartisan Hacks, the podcast about good governance from the local level on up. I'm Sean Wood, City Councillor and 2026 mayoral candidate with the City of Parksville.
And I'm Joel Grenz, also a Parksville City Councillor. Today we are talking to someone who holds what might be the most uniquely positioned mayor's chair in the province, if not the country.
Our guest is Marianne Alto, Mayor of the City of Victoria. Victoria isn't just the capital of BC. It's a mid-sized city shouldering a very large city's worth of complexity: housing pressures, homelessness, mental health and addictions, intergovernmental politics, and the provincial legislature is basically in her front yard.
Mayor Alto has been in local government for long enough to know this file inside and out, and she's been a vocal advocate for municipalities at the provincial level. And we're really glad to have her with us today here at AVICC in Victoria.
Before we get into it, the standard disclaimer: the views here are our own and don't represent the City of Parksville or any other council, including Victoria's. We're just three local government nerds talking shop.
That said, Mayor Alto does speak for council.
That is true.
which we do not.
Mayor, thank you very much for being here.
Always a pleasure, yes.
And thank you for allowing us to come to your city for AVICC, which is a gathering of local government elected officials from across Vancouver Island, as well as the coastal communities.
Right.
And we're learning and networking and enjoying your fair city.
Thank you. And you've got amazing weather here this week. So
No
it's fantastic.
kidding. It's gorgeous.
You've ordered it well. I think the motions you passed for good weather
Yes, all passed, yes,
yeah,
unanimously.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, listening to your recitation of all the things that are in my front yard made me tired. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. No wonder I felt so busy.
No wonder. That's right.
Well, I mean, I think that's why we wanted to have you on, is because you have dealt with sort of front lines on a number of issues that are a bit of a microcosm of the province generally. Two of those are, of course, housing, and the related thing that goes with housing is homelessness and having mental health and addiction challenges to deal with on that file. Maybe we're hoping to kind of get out of you some of what your learnings have been over the past few years on that. You've had to find ways to work with different levels of government in a unique way. So maybe just open it up for your thoughts on maybe what you've learned and what your recommendations are for other councils across the province.
Wow, that's a big question. I guess I'd start with the first thing that I think everyone has to be aware of is that they need to be adaptable. And so, we've been very lucky in the last few years in that we've had a very progressive and I think very collegial relationship with the provincial government, and to a certain extent with the federal government too. And so we've been able to navigate and negotiate a number of different joint programs that have really helped us in both of those areas. The housing file is an interesting one because, of course, we have an incredibly fast-growing city and very deep densification underway. When the provincial,
right outside the window,
yes,
in fact,
I know,
right behind us here.
Yes. We're sitting across, the convention center is sitting across from one of our most spectacular developments, actually, the Telus Ocean Building, which I was reminded is in its fourth year?
It was.
Fourth year, I guess it is.
There's a big hole in 2022.
It was.
Yeah, our first time we were here for AVICC,
There was a big hole.
There was a big hole.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I kept walking by it going, please, please, please get up to the level of the road. Right?
Yeah.
Because until you get to the road level, to the earth level atop, it's often fraught with things that can, in fact, derail the entire project. So once they reached street level, we were all super happy. But yeah, it's a great example. That one actually is a commercial building primarily, although there are some public spaces in it, which is going to be really cool. But yeah, when you go back to sort of residential housing, for us, when the provincial government a couple of years ago came out with their housing targets, actually I was the one in the front row going, pick me, and jumping up and down, because in fact the city's targets for housing were much more aggressive than the province's.
Oh.
So we didn't have any expectation of not being able to meet those targets, and in fact, we've exceeded them the first few years, and are still running at that pace.
Did you get a prize or something from?
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Provincial government doesn't give you any award or something, or something.
We should get a cup or something.
Yeah.
Maybe they will at the end of five years, because I think their first tranche was 5 years.
Okay.
But part of that, to be fair, although my current council has been very enthusiastic about housing for the most part, many of those initial successes were as a result of decisions made by the previous council. So kudos to them as well. But yeah, we've raced really far, really fast with housing, and we've adopted some really progressive and somewhat challenging, it's sometimes, policies around missing middle housing, as we used to call it, around the automatic densification on certain lots and what you can build without too much intervention from the city, as well as reorganizing and providing a more blanket type of zoning on different parts of the city as well. One of the things that we've really had to pay attention to, because we are growing so fast, is the protection of the industrial and light industrial lands, which are all around our harbor. We don't have a lot of it, and it's really important, and it creates a lot of jobs, really well-paying jobs, and a lot of industry in which many people rely, particularly around shipping and the ocean. So that's been
Do you
something.
count cruises, like are cruise ships?
No,
under that?
that's different.
Okay, that's a different category.
Yeah, that's the visitor industry, which is huge, and you may or may not know that this year, actually, we have 333 ships coming in.
Wow.
Almost 1 million people will be coming through Victoria this summer. I had a chance to greet the first ship of the season a few weeks ago, and it was a Holland America ship, and they come quite often. We have a number of new cruise lines that are coming to Victoria for the first time this year, which is always good to see. A couple of them actually that are considering making us a home port, which is very important, because when they start here or they end here, one or the other, then you have people who generally add time before and after, and that's a very helpful thing from a visitor industry perspective. But no, when I say industrial, I mean mostly in the inner and upper harbors, and those are mostly around transportation, ferries and whatnot, and seaplanes. But also in the upper harbor, we do a lot of repair work for ferries, for commercial vehicles, for different types of ships. So that's a really important part of our economy. And so as we grow super fast in the residential and commercial sectors, we also want to make sure that we don't lose track of the fact that industrial lands, especially harbor lands, are very, very important.
And jobs for all that housing as
absolutely.
well.
And they're good jobs, right? They're generally high-paying jobs, family-supporting jobs, and so it's a really important thing to remember. So the housing piece for us has been one of the easier challenges to meet, because we've been thinking about it for a long time, and we've been doing preparatory policies, and we've been implementing those for quite some time. So although the province's edicts were new for some, and they were new for us as well, they weren't particularly surprising, and they were very much in line with what we were planning anyway.
Is that mainly market housing?
No, it's across the spectrum. Okay. And so, there's a lot of market housing that's coming in, but there's a fair amount of below market housing and very, very low affordable housing. And we have actually policies in place that reward developers for the more housing that they build in the lower ends of the affordability spectrum. And nonprofits have a variety of very key policies attached to them, so that they jump to the front of the line right off the bat. Okay. They have much lower fees. Some of them don't have any fees at all. Some of them are actually eligible for city funding. We have a per bedroom funding model for nonprofits when they're building affordable housing. So we have a number of different policies that actually encourage, I guess is the right word, the lower end of the affordability spectrum to be built, particularly by nonprofit societies. So we have a lot of that in the city.
And you guys pick up the tab and not the province?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, the provincial funding is there for BC housing type things and other programs, but the city itself has its own programs for supporting nonprofit housing, and particularly very, very affordable housing.
For the capital costs then, or would that be?
Well, yes, it can be, but it also is more of a sense of, if you're going to come to me and you're a nonprofit housing provider and you say, I want to build 100 units of low-cost housing, it will be operated by the same organization or another organization that's a nonprofit. They have other partners that are in the nonprofit sector. We will actually assess that, and we have an affordable housing reserve. And so depending upon what that is and what the components are, then we'll actually say, okay, you're going to build 100 units. How many bedrooms do they have? And the reason we do that is an interesting thing, is because in years past, people would very often build studios and one-bedrooms, which is great. I mean, there's a huge market for that, and even in the nonprofit world, that can accommodate lots of people. But what we were seeing are significant gaps in multi-bedroom units, which support extended families, multi-generational families. And so we used to have a per-unit benefit, and now it's a per-bedroom benefit.
Oh.
So if you're going to build a big facility and they're mostly 3-bedroom units, you're going to get more than based on our current policies and what we had previously. And that's because we are constantly identifying where the gaps are and where the needs of the community are, and trying to adapt the policies to respond to those. And so we're very heavily invested in affordable housing and nonprofit housing in the city.
Nerd alert question. The funding of that reserve comes from where?
Property taxes. No,
Property
I mean,
tax,
just
yeah.
like any other municipality, I mean, almost, as you well know, I mean, almost all of the money that we get comes from property taxes.
Yeah, it's
And
not
so-
from DCCs or from other.
Well, some of it is, yes, certainly, because the reserve itself has contributions from a variety of sources, but the lion's share of it will be the same source as everything else. I mean, we make choices every year. We've just actually finished our budgeting for 2026, and we make, thank goodness, although it hasn't actually been finalized because apparently there was a typo that came from the original documents, which made no difference to the end. Let's be clear.
Oh, it didn't
The
carry the
numbers
two?
didn't change.
Oh, okay.
But it was an insertion of information from last year that was an error. Anyway, long story short, it got delayed by 2 weeks, but it will be finished very shortly. But as part of that situation every year, of course, we make very critical decisions about what we do with the money that we get. And yes, some of them come from development charges. As you know, changes have been made to the amenity cost charges. So that's a whole big conversation we can go into for a long time. And some of it comes from permits and fees and some, but the lion's share of it comes from property taxes for sure. And so we consider that. So the housing piece is actually the really proactive building part. And the flip side of that, as you mentioned before we've been on the air, of course, is the impact of the densification and the growth of the city that is so fast, and its location as a core city within a region of folks who are unhoused. And that is a whole different conversation. I don't know if you want to go in there.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. You've tried different things in the city of Victoria around that. It's a bit of a focal point in the region as a place that has a lot of services, and therefore a lot of people who are in need of those services would end up in Victoria. What are you seeing working in that area, and how can we help folks that are looking for a way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's true of all municipalities. I mean, I'm the co-chair of an organization or an association called the BC Association. Oh my God, I've just lost it. BCUMC, BC Union of it's the 16 largest communities in the province. BC Urban Mayor's Caucus. Gosh, clearly I have not had enough sleep over this weekend. That's right.
Okay.
BC
The BC Urban Mayor's Caucus. So these are the 16 communities in the province that are the largest by population. And so you can imagine they're very eclectic. This is a very mixed bag of organizations and cities. And so we don't always agree on a lot, although we do have some similarities, and we certainly are all very invested in things like housing and community safety and things like that. But one of the things on which we agree completely, which is fascinating, is the challenge of working with the province around housing, but also the absolutely paramount issue of dealing with public safety. And so obviously every community does it differently and has different degrees of issues. But the issues are all essentially based in the same sense, and that is I guess you'd call it almost the devolution of civil society, where you have declining sense of civil discourse and of civility, frankly. And that's led to significant inequities around economics, the degree of poverty that's increasing so dramatically, the lack of resources available for social services and healthcare, and a variety of other traditionally social programs that are often been offered by the province or the feds, and how that has contributed to a significantly growing number of unhoused persons. You add that into the sense of our weather, and witness the day, as well as the fact that this is a core dense city in a region which actually has about 400,000 people, but the city itself was 105. And yet we have the lion's share, as in to the tune of more than 80% of all of the social services, the direct service provisions, and the supportive housing in the entire region. And so there is a significant concentration of those services here that do deal with folks who are in their most vulnerable state and needing the most help. And so, the city has borne that for very, very many years, and in the last few years has come to the point where they've gone, okay, we can't do this anymore, so we need help. And that help comes from our colleagues in the province, and to a lesser extent in the federal government, but mostly to our colleagues in the surrounding municipalities, from where many of these folks come. And they come to the city because we have the services and the ways of responding. But our argument is that if you have folks who would rather be at home in other parts of the region, the reason they're coming here is because you haven't made the decisions to provide them with the services that they would like and to stay where they would like to be at home. And so we have, for a couple of years now, certainly since I've been mayor, been a bit more blunt about the fact. Direct. Thank you. That's right. That's much better. Blunt and direct. About saying, hey, we've shown you how you can do this, and the reason that it looks difficult is because we're doing so much. if you did just a little tiny bit, it would help us a little bit, but really, more importantly, it would help you respond to your people in a way which actually is more appropriate for them because they would like to stay home. And a really great example I would use is that in the last year, over the last winter, the town of Sydney actually made some decisions around not wanting to have an overnight winter shelter, particularly a shelter that would deal with emergencies. There's an emergency weather protocol, and they opted not to do that. Well, there was a great hue and cry from their local folks, and that was not well received, that decision. And in fact, kudos to the Sydney Town Council. They reversed their decision.
Oh, wow.
And they
That was
decided...
in the MCR?
Yeah. And so they decided that they would start by having an emergency weather shelter, which is great. I mean, it's a great first step. We want them to do more. Of course we do. But it was a good first step. And the fact that they made a tough decision, which they thought was right, and maybe at one point in the past it might have been, but they listened to their publics who went, no, we have people who need help. The least we can do is provide a place for them when the weather is completely untenable. Let's start there. And so that was a great first step. And we're hoping that having had that go well, as I understand it, that they're now looking at something that's a little bit more permanent. It doesn't have to be big, and that's the thing. When you're looking at a town like Sydney, I think, and I can't remember exactly, but I think that they were looking at something that would accommodate like 6 or 8 people.
Super small.
Yeah, very small and appropriate for the town of that size. And so all of the communities around the region could scale this, right, to be to a space that and a size that would make sense for them, at least to start. So we were very excited about that, actually. And again, kudos to Sydney for reconsidering that decision. But that's the kind of thing that we're quite frustrated about. And we have, as I've said, I've written a number of very direct letters. Thank you for that, Brittany, to my colleagues in the region to say, hey, and even actually most recently managed to get together with the provincial Minister of Housing, Christine Boyle, and she and I jointly wrote a letter to the Capital Regional District which said, please, Capital Regional District, will you take some responsibility for working with, providing, facilitating, urging, pick a word, all of your member municipalities to do something in this same lane. It took a while, and there was a lot of reluctance, but in the end, not too long ago, actually, I think it was about a month ago, the board did agree, the CRD board, and they did send a letter to all the member municipalities to say, would you please look around and identify, if you have, and if you do, what it is, land that could be available for some type of supportive housing or shelters. Now, that was great. The disappointing part is that the letter ended with, and please tell the minister, whereas what we were hoping for is that they would actually ask for the minister and the CRD to be told so that the CRD could then have a future role in helping to facilitate the actual building of that. But, again, first steps. And it's better than doing nothing. And so we're always very hopeful, and we're always hopeful that in demonstrating how to do things that we can urge other people to scale it to the appropriate area and to get started themselves.
Mayor, one of the ways I'm kind of getting my head around this sort of topic is everybody wants a successful service, whether it's a shelter or a safe inhalation site or whatever it is. They want it to be successful, and no one wants an unsuccessful one. So what does that look like? Because if you have a successful one, even if it's a small shelter, 6 to 8 beds, and it was successful last winter, and the community around the surrounding community, neighborhood, businesses, they're like, yeah, it was, it went great. Okay, well, let's build on that a little bit next winter. Whereas if you go head first into something, let's build it. Maybe it's pretty big. We don't know who the service provider is. Maybe there could have been more experienced service provider, and it goes less than great. And the surrounding community is like, that's not happening again. Then that sets the whole process back. So start very small, and the target is something successful, and you guys ran and were carrying a lot of that burden, so much so that then it became a bit more of a problem for you, even though you wanted it all to be successful. And now, hey, let's all share a little bit of it. We'll be able to be more successful here. You guys will have a little bit of success there, your first winters or whatever it is, and we'll all keep kind of building like that.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think scale is a really important piece of that. And there are times, and I will admit freely that the city has taken some pretty big risks in the last couple of years, in particular, in moving very fast, and moving very fast in response to urgency. But at the same time, and actually those times have worked out in the end really well, despite their very challenging beginnings. But you're right. If you're a community that's never done this before and you're looking at how to start, it's a very good idea to get a few ducks in the row. And that is to, start at a scale that you think makes sense. You're not going to solve every issue all at once from the beginning, but you can start doing parts of it. And so you assess, what are the numbers that you could manage? What's the operator that works well with your community? I mean, Victoria has multiple operators, and the beauty of that is that they deal with different demands and different orders of need. But if you're a smaller community, then you may only have one or two operators from which to choose. And so you have to make some good decisions about who those might be and how they work. Yes, it's helpful to do public engagement and to do, neighborhood conversation. Yes, but ultimately, you also have to be responsible and brave enough to understand that it is your decision about whether or not you're going to move into this area in response to your own people. And that is because anything new and anything challenging is hard. And that just goes with the job. I mean, to a certain extent, if you've identified the fact that there's a need in your community and you think you have a model that works with an operator, a size, a location, whatever, all the different things you need to consider, at some point, you're going to have to be on the hook for that decision. And initially, it's going to be really difficult. And there will always be some people who will say no. And you have to decide whether you're going to do it and let it demonstrate its own success.
Yes.
I've seen you do that in video. I've seen video of you showing up in maybe not the most supportive situations.
Yes, that's a famous video. Yes.
Yeah, but speaking, and I mean, I think that's an important part of the job. It's maybe a part that politicians don't like to do, or people just generally don't like to do, to go to speak directly to the people who are actually most against the thing that you're trying to do.
Yes.
Instead of just ignoring them.
Oh, yes. Oh, you can't ignore people. I mean, I don't think you can. I mean, some people do,
Well,
I guess.
that's the inclination, though. I think for most of us, it's just ignore them. But I think if you go to the people who are most likely to be against it and are being very vocal about it, let's have that conversation. We're not going to come away from the conversation maybe agreeing, but at least we've had the conversation, and you see that I'm not just some, I don't know, evil person who's trying to inflict pain upon you. I'm trying to do the right thing as a representative of the community writ large.
You're, I'm sure, talking about the Delaware Place public meetings that happened a few years ago now, and I think I referenced this before we went on the air. That particular project, which started in an enormous amount of controversy, was because we knew that we had a combination of circumstances. We had an opportunity where an operator had the chance to buy a building. They didn't have quite enough money, and so they came to the city and said, look, if you gave us a grant, that would be our down payment, and we have the ability to then continue paying over 10, 15, 20 years as a mortgage and begin to build a permanent location for really critical services. And so we said, okay, we know we'd worked with this operator before. We knew what they did. In particular, they were the folks who dealt with the most vulnerable and in-need folks who were on our streets at the time. And so we proceeded with them, and we looked at the location that they had, because, again, this was the opportunity that they had. And on one side, it was a dairy. On one side, it was a church. On one side, it was a seniors facility with whom we talked beforehand. On one side, there was a small business that created keys, I think as it was. And so there were some residents nearby, but they weren't right next door. And so we thought, okay, if we're ever going to find a location, this kind of hits a lot of the marks. So we went ahead, and of course, there was a wild reaction. It was. And so it was a very, very difficult first 6 months for them. There was a lot of vandalism. They did a variety of different renovations that they had to do multiple times because of that. Eventually, they got to the point where they were operating. But in that time, you're right, there were a number of public meetings that I went to. And I think this is part of my job, warning to you if you actually end up being neighbor.
Yeah, just show up for the happy things and cut.
No, I went and I had a number of public meetings where I said, here's what we're doing and here's why. Here are the circumstances that led to this being what we thought was a good opportunity. So, yell at me. And they did. And you will know that there were at least two different public meetings where there were hundreds of people who literally spent 2 or 3 hours yelling at me. And periodically, they would ask a question that I would try and answer, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. And that was okay, because when you make change like that, and it's really, really hard, you have to give people space to vent because they're frightened, and you're saying I am going to make this really difficult decision to change something that's important in your neighborhood because I think it's the right decision, and here's the reasons why. But I understand that you're scared, and I understand that change is hard. So yes, I will come and stand in front of you and let you yell at me, and I will try and explain it as much as you are willing to hear. You can blame me. That's the next part. Go right ahead, and that's part of my job as the mayor. And so we're going to push through and see how this works. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We can do something differently. But if it does, time will tell. And so that's a couple of years ago now. And interestingly, this particular program now is being funded by the federal government, who have actually identified it as a showpiece for a particular model and are now extolling its particular service delivery model across the country. And we're working with them to continue their funding. The province uses this facility actually and has recently told us that they use it quite extensively, although they're not funding it at this point, and we're in the conversations like that. Yet, hopefully. But the point that you made, I think, at the beginning of this was, yes, there were times in those meetings and in those conversations where I said, when someone took a breath, all right, here's a question for you. Tell me, if I asked you this question beforehand, would you like this in your neighborhood? How many people would say yes? Not a single person stood up. No. And in fact, there was a resounding chorus of hundreds of people who were shouting at me saying, not in your chat, not fairly unflattering things as well. And that's okay, because it was hard. But it was the right thing to do. And now, looking back, in a perfect world, could we have taken a year or two to do public engagement? Absolutely. Would we have lost the opportunity that was there? Yes, we would have. And so we took a big risk. I took a big risk. And I said, I will take this for council. And my council, interestingly, were quite happy to let me take that, interestingly. Not a single one of them made a comment. Yeah. And I went out in front of everyone and said, yep, I get it. And this is the right thing to do. I believe that this is the right thing to do. And in the end, it's turned out that it has been.
Well, great story and inspiration for Sean there.
Yes. Good luck, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. That's very encouraging.
Soon there will be videos of Sean.
Part of this conversation, Mayor, is what is provincial responsibilities and how does a local government either play defense and not take those on, or stop waiting for a province that may not have the funding to execute on some of these topics, and you just take it on yourself, maybe with or without that provincial funding. What's
That's a tough question. I mean, being the capital city, as you mentioned in your intro, we have an unusual situation where I can walk down the street and talk to ministers when they're willing.
I was going to ask that. Do you actually do that? I mean,
I do.
Just walk over there.
Yep. No, I do. All the time, actually. And not all the time. That's an exaggeration, but many times. It's one of the reasons, actually, interestingly, when we all go to the Union of BC Municipalities Conference, is that Victoria traditionally has never asked for a meeting. And the reason that we don't is because we think we have an advantage being here. And so it seems, unfair for us to take up time there when there are folks from every other municipality who maybe don't have that. So we do correspond, speak with, connect with the provincial government frequently.
Across the street
virtually. I have a very positive relationship with the provincial government currently, and certainly have made every effort to nurture that, in the sense that we do have a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation. We work together in a number of programs and policies. And as I mentioned earlier, we weren't troubled at all by the housing policies and some of the other things that have been difficult for some municipalities and haven't been for us. But there is no doubt that understanding that the provincial government, like every government, is struggling financially. There came a point, and certainly I think it was a point in this term in particular, where, in observing what could be done by other orders of government and the needs that were certainly in community at a variety of different levels, that we decided that we were going to be proactive, very generally. And in the spring of 2023, actually, so the first spring after I was elected as mayor, I spent a number of months actually kind of analyzing what I thought that the issue of the term would be, what would be the paramount issue of the term. And it was my decision that it would be community safety. And so starting that summer, we put together sort of a blue ribbon panel of people from the community, everywhere from community service providers to the police chief and fire chief to the medical health officer and a variety of others. So a really eclectic group of people to say, all right, what does this look like? What is this? What is community safety? And it became clear that it wasn't just community safety. It was community safety and well-being, which was really important because they're part and parcel of the same thing. Anyway, a year and a half later, we had a plan. And so council adopted that plan last summer, and we started going. And it is relevant to your question because almost everything that we have done and are still doing in the first phase of it, and there are multiple phases, would traditionally be considered in the realm of responsibility for our provincial government. So we've been, there are some pieces that are very traditionally municipal, so we've been heavily investing in policing and bylaw. That's very much local government authorities. But that's only about a third of the first phase of the budget and the actions. The other 2/3 actually were in nurturing and supporting existing and new community service agencies to develop and deliver the services that they do really well, even better and more. Actually moving into creating actual spaces for people to go if they are unhoused. So we've created 97 new spaces that are 2/3 of which are shelter spaces, the other third of which are in sort of that next step after shelter, what we used to call second stage housing. And so almost 100 people will shortly, we'll be wrapping this up or getting the rest of it on in the next month or so. So almost 100 people will be able to move off the street into a place to start that journey into housing and supports. It's a huge number actually, and will be noticeable when it's finally resolved in that particular block. We've also done an enormous amount of work, not just in finding spaces, but in nurturing services, but in beginning to explore some really interesting things around providing ways for people to return to their families in other parts of the province. And we talked earlier about a really unique organization that's working with us to deal with Indigenous folk who want to be home and who can go home. And that's slow, steady work, but it's something that happens person by person. And so we're kind of focusing on intervention and prevention. That's the upstream stuff. Creating actual places for people to go, it's sort of been the agreement that we've all had, is we're not going to move people unless there's a place for them to go, kind of thing. And then the response piece. And the response pieces are the easy parts. And I say easy because people understand them. That's police mostly, bylaw to some extent, although lesser, but also infrastructure as we begin to repair the public realm and the public domain. And also the notion of responding with community resources. So you'll know that the City of Victoria was one of the pilots for the community response teams that are now in 7 other municipalities around the province, where you have non-police professional experts who are at the end of a phone when you can actually phone up a number and go, I'm in crisis. I'm not a criminal. I'm not doing anything criminal, and I don't need any police, but I need somebody to help me. And this is it's called Circle here in Victoria, and this is a program that's been hugely successful over the last couple of years as it's been unfolding. So things like that as well. So we're trying to go after this in multiple different ways. There is no doubt that many of those ways traditionally have been within the realm of provincial government responsibilities. Tiny number of them are federal. That speaks to housing and the gaps that those housing programs have had over many years. But at some point, council has to make that hard decision that I referred to earlier, and that is, how long do we wait? We have people. I always refer to our people, my people. These are Victorians. Some of them are housed, some of them are not. Some of them have super challenging issues in their lives. Some of them don't. They're all Victorians. And I have a responsibility, my council has a responsibility to, as much as we feasibly can, respond to their needs. And sometimes it means going places that we've never been before. But you know what? They're still my responsibility, and so we're going to try.
And when you wade into those and, show compassion and figure out a program and spend, kind of your own money on it, are those solutions yours forever, or is there...
Well, we hope not.
Okay.
Certainly the notion that... So, for example, the facilities that we're supporting, they will stay for a long time. And some of them do. Let me be clear. The last of the pieces, which is a new Bridge Street shelter that will open, is almost about to be open, but won't be open fully for another month or so. That does have provincial government support, so we are partners in that. So that's really important to note. But yeah, the places where we've gone that are solely being funded by the city, and let me say it's not my money. Well, it is my money because I do pay taxes in Victoria, but our collective money, the property taxpayers' money, we're really hoping that a lot of this will show what's possible and that we can demonstrate success, just as you said earlier in your comments, that we can demonstrate how to do this in a way which makes sense to other funders, including other orders of government, to say, this is making a difference. We did all the hard work. We made this happen. We built these things. We supported these things. We created the opportunity, and we matched the right service providers or the right operators, whatever, with the right needs that were coming from community. And this is how you can do it. So we've done the hard work. So now the easier part, not easy, but the easier part is just to sustain it. Just you really literally need to start writing checks. And so we're hoping that within a couple of years that will be an easy win. Let's be frank. I mean, you're talking about a nonpartisan discussion, but there is a political aspect to this.
Sure.
An easy win for a political party would be to say, okay, thanks for doing all that really tough stuff at the beginning. So all you really need is a year's worth of funding. What is that, right? And I mean, that's
Here's
an
the
easy
number.
That's right. And to be able to say, okay, this is a good program. It's had this many people whose lives have been changed for the better. It makes sense for this to continue. How do we do that? Well, we give it operating funds, right? And so that's, it's on the one hand, of course, it's hard. Everyone's having budget issues. But on the other hand, wow, when you get a municipality that has done literally all of the opening difficult stuff, we've tested it, we've proven it, we've constructed it. You just need to keep it going. Over to you guys, right?
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that that's where it will evolve over time.
If they have some money to spread out, they're going to look around. They're going to see someone who has pioneered, and slogged through some of the issues and worked through it. And, and if they're going to start writing checks, well, it's pretty obvious who they should start, rewarding for doing the.
Well, we think so, and I mean, you said at the point that's a really good point. We've done the tests, we've tested it out. We're the pilots. We've taken all the risks and worked out all of the the weird things that we didn't expect. We've made it run really smoothly, and we've proven that, operator X in program Y and circumstance Z, that's the way it's going to work best. And so we've done all the risk taking. We've paid upfront, and, we've made it happen. So the easy part is for you just to keep sustaining it. So we're really hoping that as those different things happen, that we'll be able to convince other funders, including other orders of government, to say, oh, yeah, that's an easy win. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's the right thing to do.
What role or what's your relationship with the nonprofit sector in delivering these various services? And how do you have a healthy nonprofit sector and these societies and groups that are actually able to function themselves properly?
Yeah. Well, I think just like everywhere, if you talk to any nonprofit right now, they're struggling financially. And so they are trying to deliver, in most cases, in all cases, really incredibly important services, and doing so with diminishing capacity, both from a perspective of human resources, as people just become tired, but also financial resources as more and more of their funders have their own capacity shrink. And so, for the city to come in and say to a really broad range of service providers, A, we really value the work that you're doing. Great job. And we're going to help you do more. We even are going to test some things with some organizations that we've never worked with before, because you're dealing with particular populations which really need help. And so I think the fact that the city's been very overt in this has been generally really well received. I mean, one of the things that I think is most challenging, and actually I'm going to Edmonton to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference in June, not just because it's interesting and there's lots of stuff, but because Edmonton has a really unusual model. They have, I'm not going to remember what the actual acronym is. It's a group of nonprofit agencies who have banded together to have a collective conversation about how they all deliver all of their work and how it's funded. It's a really interesting notion. Controversial like crazy, and it is controversial because, generally speaking, in municipal provincial government funding, mostly provincial government, but the whole context of it is we have set up a really competitive system.
Oh, yeah, it's
RFP, they're competing with each other.
That's exactly right. And there's very few opportunities for people to sit down and go, okay, I'm doing this, you're doing that, we're all paying this. This is the best way to do it. Yeah, I mean, there is a really important thing in Victoria called the Downtown Service Providers, and they meet every month, and they have these types of conversations. But I think it's fair to say that because they're stuck in this competitive system, it's really hard for them to have that kind of a conversation about resources. They talk about what they're doing with each other and how they can collaborate and cooperate, and that's excellent. But I think it falls short of so I've got $10 and you've got $10. How do we work it? And I'm not sure that's the right way to go, to be clear, but I'm interested in learning more about that. But I think the fact that they exist in this competitive world means that when you have an external player like the municipality to come in and say, I'm not going to fuss with that part of it, that's not my job, and nor is it my right. But I am going to acknowledge that you're all doing really important work in certain sectors that are helping our people, Victorians. And so we're going to help you do more of that. We're going to ask you maybe to do a little bit differently. And so, for example, we have one organization, which is a housing organization that we've actually contracted with for now almost 2 years. And they do what's called parks relocation. And they actually go into parks in the city of Victoria, and they actually create relationships with individuals one-on-one and work with them over time to determine what they need, and have actually taken many of them into the next step of the various types of supports and referrals and housing and programs and all sorts of things. And so that's
outreach.
It is amazing, actually, and it's worked tremendously well. And they have housed and supported a huge number of people over the last year and a half. But so we've essentially said, great work. We know you're all strapped. We want you to do even more, so we're going to give you some money. And I think as a result of that, our relationships have grown. They've become much more nuanced and sophisticated. We are very much more, I think, actual on-the-ground partners. Is it always easy? Of course not. Have we had conflicts? Absolutely. Do we always know what we're doing? No. But at least we're at the table going, help us. And we know you can do things we can't. All we can do is sort of work with you to create new relationships and provide money and maybe advice. And one of the interesting things that's come out of the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan is that having decided that this is indeed the paramount issue of this term and longer, I'm going to argue, that we've actually reorganized some of our most capable senior leadership within the city and created a new department. That sounds bureaucratic, and it's not, because it's only a few people, but these are people who are uniquely skilled in a variety of things. And the name of it is really important. It's called the Department of Community Safety, Wellbeing, and Partnerships. And the partnerships piece is key because we're not a service delivery agency as the city, but we are facilitators and conveners who can bring people together, provide some resources, ask for help, and then help that assist in designing what the help looks like. And I think that title speaks volumes about how you implement a plan. The Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, it is a plan. It is a blueprint. It has a series. It's 99 recommendations. Curiously, almost half of them are for the province. But it's 99 recommendations that are all action things. Go do this. And in order to implement that, we had to reconstruct our own resources, and the Community Safety, Wellbeing, and Partnerships Division, now with a director, some assistant directors in various pieces, their sole job is to implement this plan. And that means working with every department in the city, and that means reflecting the paramountcy of this issue insofar as every department now has to think about this. So even the simplest reports that come to council, land use reports, whatever, there's now a section that is called Community Wellbeing, Safety, and Partnerships. What does that mean in your proposal for X, right? I mean, you have to think about it, because that lens is so crucial, because it has such a potential impact across the board for everything the city can do in partnerships. That title is really deliberate.
That partnerships part is the foundation to get the other things done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of an unspoken unspoken role for local government is to be that convener, that connector, that making sure that everyone's playing together nicely.
Yes.
It's not something that is really, I think, talked about much, but it's certainly something that I've felt like in our term of council we've had to do, and we've actually gone out of our way to try to do, is to make sure that all these nonprofit organizations that we need in our community, otherwise it gets very expensive very quickly, we need them to be working well. We need them to have good governance. And often there are a lot of challenges around governance within these organizations. That is why they have trouble, as they run into governance issues. Well, we're in local government. We're learning a few things here about good governance, hopefully. And so that's an opportunity for us to step in informal ways to support them, although it sounds like maybe you're doing it also in a more formal way.
Yeah.
And so is that actually...
It's both, actually. And I think that is important, because relationships are built in many different ways. And yes, we have many informal relationships with a variety of the leaders and the workers in these particular organizations, because you have to know what it's like on the ground. But at the same time, there's a point at which you go, okay, so we all agree we want to work together and we think we kind of want to do it this way. And we're all at this sort of generally same goal. But let's make sure that we have, guardrails and that we understand what we expect of each other. And if we're going to give you money, and the money is not my personal money, it's my property tax money, I want to have some accountability so that I can go back to the public next year when we do our next budget and go, okay, we spent X million dollars on all of these things. We have measurements for the output. Here's where we spent it. Here's the people who spent it on your behalf, public, and here's the outcome of that. And you a city like Victoria, we have issues around civility and the decline of social equity throughout the city, as does every municipality. But we do also have sections which are particularly intense, and so there is a point at which it is fair for a resident who is housed and who is uncomfortable witnessing the challenges of a person grappling with poverty and all of its issues. It's fair for that individual to say, so what difference does that make? I gave you money, you spent millions of bucks. Does it look different? Is it different? Are the people's lives different? I mean, it isn't just about what you see, it's about the reality of how people are experiencing life in Victoria. And you have to be able to at some point say, yes, it's different, and here's how. Here's how it is. So that means that you do have to have that accountability, and sometimes it's helped by having some type of agreement, a formal agreement, as well as just that informal relationship that allows you to actually work together. But yeah, I mean, interestingly, just as a completely interesting aside, we have poured a lot of money into different programs and service providers this year, last 6 months. And actually in June, we don't have as many evening meetings as you folks would know well, because of course we're not required to have public hearings anymore. But we have specifically set aside 4 evening council meetings in each year to do thematic presentations. And the one that's coming up in June, the middle of June, actually is an opportunity for an entire evening for every organization that has received money through the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan to come to council in public and talk about what they did with it.
Oh, wow.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
I love that. Yeah.
So they each,
Showcase.
they've all been invited, and they have up to 10
They bring
minutes.
visual aids?
Anything they want. They can bring music, they can bring down, they can do all sorts of things. And to come and say, okay, you gave me X, you were hoping I'd do Y, here's what I actually did, and here's the impact on our larger community, thank you very much, or no, we didn't get enough, or whatever. I mean, it's entirely up to them. It's a complete free-for-all. I mean, they can do whatever they want with that period of time. And we did that on purpose because...
Is this on check or something?
No, it's live. That's actually interesting. Yes, it's live.
Victoria website.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
But it's a great chance for people who are, concerned about all of this money. What did you spend it on?
Accountability.
Yes, it is about accountability. And that's another really important part of it, because for the first couple of months, we had our staff come in public to council and say, here's where we're going, here's what we've done so far, here's how it's looking, here are the challenges. And it's all documented, it's all accessible, it's all in the public domain. And this time in June is going to be the first chance that the people who received the money have a chance to speak directly about their experiences. But our staff continue to provide public updates routinely every few weeks, and I think we're down to once a month now. But anyway, there's a lot of public accountability to say, we took a lot of money, we've got a big plan, we've just started, and here's what we've done so far.
Wow. We could talk, I'm sure, for hours more on various things, but before we go, are there any kind of tips? We're coming to the end of the term here for a lot of folks, people at the AVICC convention here. Everyone's thinking, do they run again? What's the future look like? Do I do another 4 years of this? Do you have any thoughts or tips or suggestions or ideas, or what you're reflecting on as you consider the next re-up?
Well, that's another half an hour. Isn't it?
In 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. Well, I think as where we started, I think I said one of the things I think that's most important for someone in local government is adaptability, because there's so many things that are unexpected that almost interferes the wrong word, but almost disrupt what you expect to have to do. And then you kind of have to deal with both. You have to deal with the stuff people expect you to do and provide the services that they rely on all the time and all that sort of stuff. But then there's always the unexpected. So I think being adaptable, I think being super calm, I think understanding that, the angst that is delivered to you, it is about your decisions, of course, but I think for the most part, one hopes it's not personal, that it's about your position and the position in which you find yourself. I know you're running out of time, but I just very quickly, I spent much of the morning actually online as part of a conference that's taking place, unfortunately, in California, that spoke specifically about the recent changes in the way women are treated as elected officials. And I think although that particular focus was for that, I mean, it is actually applicable to anyone who's elected. And that is, it has become a much more vitriolic experience. It has become a much more blameworthy, judgmented type of experience for all the reasons we talked about, previously about how the world has changed and how difficult it is right now for everyone to different degrees. But I think in that context, you consider running for public office either again or for the first time for whatever reason you think makes sense. And I genuinely believe that everyone who runs for public office at some level does it because they want to do good. And the first comments that I made after I was elected as mayor, and then when we were being sworn in, I, of course, had to make an introductory speech is the wrong word, but some words.
Remarks.
And remarks, thanks. And then at the end of it, I think what I ended up was saying something like, look, we're all here for the same reason. And my charge to my council, I think of them as my council, is this, go to your community, listen, think, and then do good work. And I really do think that's why people run for office. I hope that's why people run for office. And nowadays you think about that, I hope, and then you balance it against your capacity, your family's capacity, your ability to spend time, your ability to withstand a lot of attacks these days, to understand that it's not personal, one hopes, and that ultimately you're there to do the best you can for your community.
Well, yeah, that's sage advice, and a good inspiration for us as we all at this convention think about the next stage and whether we go back.
Right on, Mayor Alto. This has been exactly the kind of conversation we love, the real mechanics of how local government intersects with bigger systems and what it takes to actually move the needle.
Yeah, for our listeners, you can keep up with Mayor Alto and the City of Victoria at victoria.ca, maybe on YouTube as well, I think.
Yeah.
And this conversation hopefully sparks something, a question, a guest idea, a good government story. We'd love to hear from you at Nonpartisan Hacks. That's nonpartisanhacks.com.
That's a wrap for this episode of Nonpartisan Hacks. We'd love to hear what you think. Got a suggestion, a good government story, or a topic idea? Stop by nonpartisanhacks.com.
Until next time, take care of yourself and your community.
Mayor, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ian Lindsay of Lindsay and Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network, since 1996. Marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational, investment, and project development real estate. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca